Okay, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Willey, and I'm the Director of Publishing for New Readers Press. And I also have Greg Stoltz in the room with me, our product trainer and sales consultant.
Hi, everyone.
I want to welcome everyone to our webinar today on contextualized classrooms, and I want to have a special thank you to our presenter, Susan Roberts, for offering to put together this webinar so participants can better understand the benefits of contextualized instruction and how our WorkWise series can be used to contextualize lessons in the classroom. We've got a very large group of attendees today, so all of our participant phones are muted. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to enter them in the question area of your screen. And we're going to stop in a couple of spots along the way, and Greg's going to address any questions that we might have. And if you have an immediate need to have a response, such as something isn't functioning technically, go ahead and use the chat, and Greg will get right back to you. We're also going to do several polls throughout the presentation, so please be prepared to participate in those. So now I would like to introduce our presenter, Susan Roberts.
Hey, thank you so much, Sue. Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you live from chilly Louisville, Kentucky today. So I'm really excited to be here with everyone to talk about contextualized classrooms and these great new resources from WorkWise. So as a consultant and trainer and teacher and author, I'm seeing some familiar names here of attendees because I work with many of you across the country in instructional practices and standards-based instruction and contextualized instruction. And the WorkWise resources are some of my favorite ones to recommend to teachers for their adult learners. And I'm excited to talk with you today about how these new books and their wraparound support services and resources are a welcome addition to contextualized classrooms. So we're going to dive into an overview of contextualized instruction and meet these fabulous new materials. So in looking at contextualized classrooms, we have some goals for our time together today. And first, we're going to discuss the need for contextualized classrooms. So why are we shifting our lessons in that direction? And we'll also demonstrate how to create contextualized lesson plans using the WorkWise resources from New Readers Press. And then we'll outline strategies for teaching basic skills in a work-ready context, looking at resources and lesson planning. And then finally, we'll kind of pull everything together to define and reflect on best practices for contextualization. So while there are many, many reasons that contextualization is taking place, there is one common catalyst for all of us, and that's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Now, WIOA informs adult educators that we have to prepare students for the world beyond our classrooms. And so partnerships with employers and agencies like One Stop are resulting in wraparound services and job prep for students as they seek to increase both their educational and their workplace skills. And while the law explicitly cites adult education as a key player in career prep of adults, it also reiterates that our core focus is still academics. So we can prepare students for the workforce and improve their academic skills through contextualized classrooms. So we have our first poll today, I think. So before we get started, what are some strategies you're already using in your classrooms to get students ready for the workplace? Is our poll working? Oh, there it is. So which of these do you use the most? Group work, career research? Are you having students use technology a bit, or are there other things that you're practicing? So it looks like most of you are using group work a lot, as well as student technology use, and that's really great. Yeah, career research is also something that is kind of making its way more into contextualized classrooms, which is good. So it seems like there's about a tie between group work and student technology use. So that's very interesting. So contextualized instruction is the teaching of academics in a work-ready context, and that involves teaching that uses authentic workplace resources in tandem with academic skill building. So we noticed that soft skills are a little part of this, authentic workplace materials, and academic skills are still the largest focus. We won't talk too much about soft skills today, but in short, that's how students interact with the material and resources through classroom activities to enhance their soft skills. But this is the basis for contextualized instruction. Now, technically, contextualized learning isn't new in adult education. So we have all spent most of our time in adult ed classrooms using life skills to connect academics to students' lives. It is, though, it's a shift from focus of real life to workplace examples. And additionally, research shows that contextualized content enhances student engagement in the classroom, which of course is critical. Now, contextualization also involves drawing intentional connections between what they're doing in the classroom and behavior with that of the workplace. So how a particular reading strategy can help to decode a material safety data sheet, for instance. And finally, it also means students get lots and lots and lots of practice with workplace skills. So working effectively with others, clear oral and written communication, analyzing and classifying data to figure out what's relevant and necessary for work-based tasks, just to name a few. Now, some learning centers have tightly aligned career pathways courses for ABE and ASE, and these classes teach academics in the context of specific career clusters or even career pathways like healthcare or manufacturing. And other centers offer exclusive workplace skills courses in which students learn about being successful in the workplace. Now, most classes across the country, however, fall into the ABE or ASE category, kind of generally preparing students for their high school equivalency exams as well as college and or career. So we actually have our next poll, which we'd like to know who you are. Which of these three categories do you find yourself in the most? Do you mainly teach academics in a specific career context? Do you teach workplace skills classes that are standalone? Or are you more of a general ABE, ASE instructor with some workplace focus that kind of weaves throughout? Yes, we thought most of you would be in that category of C, ABE or ASE. Well, regardless of your classroom environment, all of them can be contextualized. And so what does a successful student look like when she has benefited from contextualized instruction? What is our goal with contextualization ultimately for students? Well, first and foremost, we want students to be successful, obviously, in our classrooms. We want them to attain their high school equivalency or, brush up on skills for college and prepare for the workplace. But we also want them to be successful in finding a job with a family-sustaining wage and to get a leg up for themselves and their families. And we want them to not only get a job, but to keep it. We want them to be contributing employees in their places of work. And finally, we want all of this to help contribute to meaningful lives for them. We want them to achieve their goals and their hopes and their dreams. And this all starts with contextualized classrooms where learning is really relevant. So let's meet a new series of contextualized workbooks from New Readers Press, and then we'll see them in action in contextualized lessons. So these three new books, Writing at Work, Reading at Work, and Math at Work, are standards-based academic resources with scenarios and problem sets that mirror the workplace. And so students are introduced to many forms of communication and problem solving through the lens of multiple work environments like manufacturing and hospitality and healthcare. And so WorkWise helps teachers to contextualize content and then put lessons into action. So for those programs that don't have dual enrollment opportunities, or if you don't fit in those first two categories, as most of you don't, there's still plenty of opportunities for smaller programs and students who need to integrate workforce into academic skills. And these workbooks are ideal for most of you, as we see here, most of you who fit into that category. So WorkWise utilizes real-life workplace examples where students can apply their skills to reading, writing, and calculating. And authentic formats expose students to items they'll see on the job. And reflective pieces give students many chances to evaluate and edit their work, one of those really key soft skills for students to evaluate their own work. For example, in writing at work, an intentional focus on grammar and conventions conveys the importance of professional writing skills. And then the skills rating chart in each book puts tracking progress in students' hands by allowing them to analyze their academic skills before they start with the book, and then they continue to check their progress throughout so they can see how they're growing and learning. And so here's a sample exercise in which students use their prior knowledge of place value to now learn basic operations. And the neat thing is we see an oil change record here in this example, where current minus the previous mileage helps Tyrone determine how many miles have been put on the vehicle since its last oil change. So a very real-life, workplace-centered scenario that students can relate to. And then each lesson begins by introducing students to the academic skill they're learning in the lesson, in this case, using headings and columns to find information, followed by authentic examples of how information is displayed at work, such as in a chart. And the sequencing of lessons draws students from early skills, like surveying a text, all the way through those more advanced skills, just like the standards say, like making inferences, which we find at the end of the book. And all the while, they're practicing skills with workplace examples and exercises like the one that we saw. Now, handy tips and vocabulary definitions in the margins of the lessons help students keep key information in mind as they work through the exercises, and these are present in all 3 books. And finally, every lesson ends with a student reflection on what they learned and how they'll use the lesson skills. So I think we'll pause here for a moment and see if there are any questions that have come in that Greg would like to address for us or send my way.
Hi, everyone. The big question up to this point is, will there be available for us a copy of the PowerPoint? The answer is a resounding yes. We will make the PowerPoint available for you folks, so thank you for that.
Okay, go ahead, Susan. That was it for now.
Wonderful. Okay. So now that we've seen these new resources, what we're going to do at this point is dive into contextualized instruction, where we talk about lessons themselves, the different elements of lessons that focus on those academics with authentic materials and skills that mirror the workplace. And today we'll be looking at a lesson plan for writing at work, lesson 1. It's a lesson that uses a lesson from one of the books we just saw. And we'll be reviewing the academics and authentic materials and soft skills that students learn in that lesson. So how exactly do great resources like these new WorkWise books fit into a lesson plan? So one tool that is helpful for creating contextualized lessons is a template that merges those 3 categories of academics, materials, and soft skills. So available in the supplemental resources is just such a template, along with a sample lesson completed there for you for writing, reading, and math. And these templates have been developed for teachers using best practices to outline all of the elements of effective contextualized lessons. They can be used to create your own lesson plans using the WorkWise books. And the template is a Word file, so it's customizable for your use. And it also includes some guiding statements and questions to remind you of what all goes into a contextualized lesson. And these lesson templates will be available on the WorkWise page of newreaderspress.com, which we'll pull up later to show you that URL so you can remember where to find this. So let's look at the elements of contextualized lessons and at one of these sample lessons, that writing at work, lesson 1, to explore contextualization in action. So one thing that we said hasn't changed in our classrooms is the focus on academics. Because obviously, if we aren't teaching them reading and writing and computation that they'll need either in post-secondary or in the workplace, then who is teaching them that? It has to be us. So reviewing job descriptions from any field shows us the importance of academic skills in the workplace as well, of course. Employees who are able to communicate clearly and compute accurately stand head and shoulders above their peers, which helps to increase upward mobility in their field and kind of brings us back once again to those student goals of family-sustaining wage. For most of us, standards are the guide for what students need to learn at a given level. So the college and career readiness standards, the GED assessment targets and indicators, and WorkKeys targets for instruction are all examples of guiding standards for instruction. And when students are able to demonstrate mastery of the standard or target, they're ready to move on to the next and the next and the next. So within the standards are skills, actions students have to take in a given context in order to show mastery of the standard. So are they asking and answering questions, or are they multiplying and dividing? That's what the standards tell us. And finally, activities and assessments are how students will practice and demonstrate mastery of the skills in the given lesson. So in short, standards tell us what to teach, and skills and actions tell us what students will be able to do as a result of the lesson. And then activities and assessments tell us how well students know the new information and the new skills that they learned. So after I identify the standard or skill I want students to learn in my lesson, then I begin to ask myself, what's the goal for the lesson? That is, what will students be able to do when the lesson is through? And these goals are my objectives for the lesson, more or less. I always want to make sure my objectives are measurable somehow so that I know whether or not individuals met the mark for understanding. And next, I think about that assessment that I'm going to use with students to show me that they got it, that they can summarize the passage, or that they can find the missing variable or identify the main idea, let's say. So what will individual students do to demonstrate their learning? And lastly, I also keep in mind why I'm teaching the lesson, which is obviously one of the most important elements of what value is it to the student. Why is it important? I can also make it a point to tell my students the purpose so that they can make those connections between what they're learning and then how they're going to use it in their life or in their workplace. So objectives, assessment, and purpose are key parts of our academics, again, that first category we're talking about. So here on this lesson, we see the planning elements that are academic in nature. So as stuff that I'm preparing for the lesson. So notice that lesson 1 here of writing in the workplace correlates to language anchor standards for the CCRS, anchors 1, 2, and 3, as well as writing anchor 4. Now, writing anchor 4 deals a lot with students identifying purpose, task, and audience in lots of formats. And also notice then that the objective for this lesson is that students will do just that, identify and explain task and purpose and audience in different formats in the lesson. The lesson assessment then makes sure students can identify those elements as well. And we'll look at the materials that they're going to be using for purpose, task, and audience here in a bit. So then, yes, let's look at what we'll use to teach those academic skills. So now that we've discussed what academic skills explicitly students will be working on, what types of materials or resources can be used in a lesson? What are these authentic materials, that next category of materials for our lesson? Authentic workplace materials are the best resources for contextualized instruction. So authentic materials serve as your tools for contextualized lessons. Workplace forms like charts and instructions are great both for reading and writing activities. And employee handbooks provide a multitude of inference, cause and effect, if-then examples, and employee documents like pay stubs and technology agreements introduce students to realistic calculations and workplace expectations. And the great thing is many of these are included in the WorkWise books, and they're also all over the internet, not to mention in your own workplace as well. Vocabulary is a really important element of contextualized instruction. Because if you think about it, workplace terms and career-specific jargon can be difficult for students who aren't yet familiar with the work environment you're talking about. And so drawing attention and focusing on new vocabulary can give students confidence in their understanding of materials that they'll encounter in the workplace. And then allowing students to take a moment to practice new vocabulary in conversation and exercise is a really good use of time. And actually, in the WorkWise books, students are introduced to new terms in context and write new sentences of their own using these terms. And so the synthesis of knowledge supports their understanding of common workplace language. Other materials like scenarios and role play give students a chance to read and write, but also practice speaking and listening, which is really important for workplace. And then they're at the same time exposed to different interpersonal situations and can gauge how they should or would react. Contextualized problem sets in math, like learning measurement techniques for flooring store, let's say, bring math skills into the real world. And job searches help students practice inquiry-based learning skills, and resume practice gives them a chance to tie what they've learned in writing into their future. Now, finally, another element that I really like, another material, if you will, is guest speakers from local employers who can be very effective for students to learn more about a particular work environment or to draw direct connections between in-class and the workplace. Project-based learning activities are another favorite of mine for culminating assignments in particular, because it gets students out into the community, allowing them to identify a problem or need, and then develop ways to address the issue that they've thought of. And so even with 12 different examples shown here, this is really only the tip of the iceberg for authentic materials. We really have a plethora of them around us. And at the end of the webinar, we're actually going to list some of the places that you can locate these. Again, if you need to step outside your learning center to find them, we're going to list some resources there at the end. So here are some of the authentic materials in Writing at Work Lesson 1 there in the work lesson materials that we're looking at. The lesson plan also suggests to the instructor that he locate sample forms and checklists and applications from local businesses or even his own workplace to pull into the lesson as well. And notice that in this exercise, students will be using their academic skills that we've already identified for the lesson, the importance of knowing task, purpose, and audience, to evaluate these sample applications. So very practical application here of their academic skills in a work-ready context. Now, especially in the contextualized classroom, modeling how to use the day's academic skills to learn more about workplace materials is a very important first step in instruction, because remember that many of the forms and problem sets that students are seeing for the first time are unfamiliar to them. And modeling draws direct attention to these authentic materials being used and to the soft skills for the day. Then next, give students a chance to practice things with each other. So that also allows them time to practice soft skills. So pair students to review new workplace policies or practice quadrupling a recipe for a catering job, let's say. You're still around, of course, to provide support and check on progress, and then reteach anything that seems iffy for students. And finally, you ultimately want to know what they know as individuals. So give them a chance to practice by themselves with feedback from you, and then be assessed on their progress. How well are they doing? Note that assessment doesn't mean they take a test every class, of course. It does, however, mean that students complete some sort of activity from the day that shows measurable progress of learning. So maybe students use a checklist just to self-assess their paragraph summary. And if they get 8 out of 10 practice problems right on their math exercise, they're good to go and ready to move on. Those are just very basic you-do opportunities for them. So here in our sample lesson, we see how instruction begins with a warm-up to students into the content for the day. And then this lesson, the instructor starts by showing lots of those sample communications that were collected ahead of time, those workplace forms, employee handbooks, and so on. And in the reading lesson plan, students go on a scavenger hunt to find diagrams around their learning center. So you'll be able to check out that lesson plan as well. And next, earlier exercises are done with modeling from the instructor, then practiced together. And finally, students work alone in the same sort of work to demonstrate their understanding. So it's a gradual release of students into the world, if you will, to practice those skills that they've been learning. Now, in the writing lesson, Exercise 1 here from Writing at Work, Lesson 1, is modeled by the instructor in a Think Aloud, with exercises 2 and 3 being done in pairs and as a group. And finally, exercise 4 and the assessment are completed by students independently to give each student a chance to show learning and progress. So again, that gradual release and support until ultimately they're doing it alone, so you can gauge understanding. Now, as we mentioned, and as you saw at the top of the lesson template, contextualized classrooms also include soft skills. And in fact, 92% of executives say job candidates don't have the soft skills necessary to be successful in the workplace. That's an enormous number. And only 12% of those executives say academic knowledge is more important than soft skills. That's a really interesting number as well. So much of our student population has either been out of the workplace for a number of years or has never been employed. And many also haven't grown up seeing families serve as examples for work ethic like most of us are used to. And so being cognizant of the 4 C's of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity helps to open doors for students to learn about and practice soft skills in the classroom. And in addition to the instructor modeling, here are some examples of ways students can employ, I guess pun intended, employ the 4 C's. So for communication, academic instruction, of course, covers many of the bases, just like with the WorkWise writing activities. And students can also speak frequently to each other and to you, with attention drawn to different modes of speech depending on the audience. And presentations on occupational research give students the opportunity to try their hand at formal speaking. Collaboration involves students spending time working together to learn new concepts. And collaboration can sometimes be tough for adult students at first. So warming them up to this gradually is usually a good plan. I like to intentionally pair students, such as in a multi-generational partnership or introverts with extroverts, for instance. And group work can also help students practice both the soft skill of collaboration and whatever academic content's being taught that day. Now, critical thinking is covered very nicely by the college and career readiness standards, and thus the WorkWise series. And we know that critical thinking is very important on our high school equivalency exams and has kind of been a shift in the changes in recent years in those exams. Text-dependent questions and prompts draw students beyond comprehension and in reading and writing activities. And rigor in math allows time for students to develop new concepts and then practice them and then apply their skills in lots of different ways. But students can also be led to think critically and creatively through interpersonal activities like class debates and cause and effect scenarios. So as we're looking here at the 4 C's, I think we have our next poll to see which of these do you focus on the most? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking, or creativity? Kind of a dead heat here between communication and critical thinking. Which makes sense because, again, those are the 2 areas of soft skills, those 2 C's really lend themselves nicely toward academics. And so, again, yes, we're most likely already doing that. So it looks like pulling in some collaboration and even a little creativity can pull ourselves more toward contextualization. But yeah, we're right at 43% for each of those, for communication and critical thinking, which is completely normal. And by the way, there are more great books from New Readers Press that work nicely in tandem with content and activities from the latest WorkWise books. Choosing a job, getting a job, and starting a job takes students all the way from identifying career interests, then into what to expect when they begin their new job. And so another poll, I know these have been out for a little while and are really popular. So do any of you use these resources already? You use them often or sometimes, or have you not tried them yet? Okay, looks like some of you use them for sure. So definitely sometimes. Yeah, so consider those as well as extra add-ins that focus explicitly on soft skills, and they're really good supplemental resources to fit along with these new books that we're looking at today. And additionally, with these other 3 books that we've just talked about, there are some other supplemental resources online for those that give students extra practice with goal setting, and skills analysis. So you can pull in these resources for additional reading and writing practice for students in contextualized classrooms. I particularly like the goal setting for long-term goals there as a favorite. So in our writing lesson, we're focusing on communication and teamwork. Pairing or grouping students for guided practice is not only a good way to give students soft skills practice, but we know one of the best ways to dive deeper with material is to teach it to a peer. In this lesson, pairs are practicing ordering steps in the writing process and completing exercises together. And in the math lesson, which is online, they're working problems as a team and teaching the class while solving problems on the board. So again, soft skills embedded with the academic content and activities that they're doing. Now, the final piece to a great contextualized lesson allows students to think about what they've learned and, most importantly, how they'll use it. So each of the WorkWise lessons has a student reflection piece at the end. And I also suggest in the lesson plans that when you can, have students share reflections as they're willing and be able, so that students can build on and learn from each other's experiences, because a lot of the time adult students want to come and sit and get and not open up as much, but they can really learn a lot from each other through reflection at the end. And you'll notice on the lesson template, there's also a place for your reflection. I like having a place to make notes about what worked well and what I plan to do differently the next time I teach that same lesson. So you can jot down your notes at the bottom and have them handy for next time. Another element here in the lesson plan is extension activities. And they're a great way for students to get extra practice as a review for struggling learners, or as a preview for what's to come, or an expansion on what they've already learned for those who are already ready to move on. So extension activities are particularly good for multi-level classrooms that we, of course, all know so well. So for instance, the free online resources, which we're going to look at here in a moment, are wonderful tools for students who are ready for more content, and simultaneously for those needing a review of prior concepts. For instance, in this lesson, advanced students can use the first part of the writing reminders tool found at the WorkWise webpage and make additional sentences using some of the vocabulary from the day. They're using the vocab and are also learning new conventions to use in their writing. And also, students who need a little more practice can identify task, purpose, and audience for some of those additional workplace samples that the instructor has introduced for the day. Both really good examples of extension activities. So as I've mentioned throughout, as a supplement to the WorkWise books we've looked at, the New Readers Press WorkWise website has additional free resources for use, including those used in the writing lesson plan we just reviewed. And again, this URL will be up at the end for you as well, but that's found at newreaderspress.com/workwise. And each book is supplemented with free online resources. For example, the supplemental math practice provides additional practice and application problems in content areas that students struggle with the most, such as basic computation, fractions, anyone? Yes, and percentages. And this extra practice, like the one on page 7, could also serve as an assessment in a contextualized lesson plan. So those extension activities, those supplemental resources online are really wonderful. But now for my favorite resource of those supplements. As part of those 3 resources available, a sample job application allows students to practice using a computer to apply for employment. So this is a digital template. This is something they fill out online. And those fillable fields give students a chance to test drive their computer skills without the risk of making a mistake on the real deal. And this resource fits nicely in both writing and reading lessons, perhaps with Writing at Work Lesson 2 or Reading at Work Lesson 3. And I know in all the lesson plans I've been making over the years, I've looked for something like this, a sample online employment application. But I haven't found one from a credible source that I would be comfortable using with students and telling them to enter information into. So I'm so glad that this resource is available now from New Readers Press. I think we're going to pause again and see if there are any other questions at this point, because we've talked a lot about those authentic materials and those academics and soft skills coming together and making a lesson using WorkWise. So what questions are there at this point, Greg?
Thanks, Susan. The one question that's popped up several times is about the skill levels or graded levels. Are there different graded levels for ABE, for ASE, for ESL? The answer to that is there is just the one level at which it's written, and that's reading levels 6 to 8. So across all 6 of the WorkWise workbooks, it's a reading level 6 to 8. We do have a brand new series out called Road to Work that addresses ELLs at a lower level, like a high beginning to low intermediate, and maybe that will be the subject of a future webinar.
Is that it for questions?
That's really it for the questions so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful to know. And you as instructors are used to working in multi-level classrooms, and I'm sure you have already, just in looking at all of these great resources, seen ways you can make adjustments and plan for students of different levels as well. And speaking of that, their free online resources also include correlation charts for each book. So these charts provide peace of mind that what students are learning aligns both to the content of the college and career readiness standards, and thus, of course, the high school equivalency exams that students are preparing for, as well as CASAS. So it shows targeted standards and competencies for each lesson. And that's where we can see here, that's where I pulled the lesson standards from that my lessons focus on. It tells me right there in those charts the focus standards for each individual lesson. So as I mentioned, there are 2 additional completed lessons for you to access. One for lesson 4 of reading at work, and one for lesson 3 of math at work. So don't forget that the blank template is ready for download as well, ready for customization based on your program's needs, and has those guiding questions there for you as you look toward contextualization. And additional fields on the templates include space for teaching notes and additional resources that you want to pull in. So speaking of those additional resources that I mentioned earlier, here are some other wonderful places to find authentic materials for your lessons. ONET, and some of you probably use some or all of these, but ONET is a great tool for students to use to research jobs of interest. And each description lists academic and even soft skills for the job, plus schooling and salary expectations. I particularly like ONET simply because it does focus explicitly on soft skills required for each job that students look at, and that's pretty handy. The Society for Human Resource Management site has a lot of job descriptions and then workplace forms and interview questions as well. I really like their workplace forms collection. They have lots of different samples that students can work with. OSHA is one of my favorite resources for students, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And students can even get on there and complete accident simulations and fill out incident reports based on what they see. And the material safety data sheet collection exposes students to different hazards in all workplaces. If you were to open a closet there in your learning center, there should be MSDSs there on the wall for any cleaning supply that a janitor could come into contact with. So this site outlines worker rights and posters and letters and has just a wide variety of occupational content. And finally, CTE Online has lots of projects and lessons for all career pathways, complete with contextualized problem sets and quality assessments. They have really good stuff on there as well. And so these are just a few of the many digital resources available today that can enhance our contextualized instruction as well. So I think we have another poll. Since you've seen lots of good tools today, which of these are you most excited about? Because again, New Readers Press has provided some really good stuff. The WorkWise books, those free supplemental resources online, or the lesson plans. Well, it's almost a dead heat here. About equal for all. Yeah, those 3 things put together really makes a nice, well-rounded contextualization support content there. That's very good. Yeah, the supplemental resources are leading by a bit. I agree. Those are wonderful. So Remember that contextualizing instruction means teaching academics in a work-ready context and exposing students to what they'll encounter in the workplace while teaching them reading and writing and math that they'll need for success. And the journey toward contextualized classrooms is one that can seem slow going, but starting out with WorkWise and all of its great resources can help you take off running with preparing your students for the next steps outside your classroom. So at this point, I will turn it back over to Sue to tell you more about a special discount for today's participants. And again, to give you a reminder of who to contact and where you can find some of these great things that we've talked about today. And thanks so much for your time.
Susan, thank you so much. We really appreciate the work you put into this. If anyone wants to order the books, we are offering a special discount through the end of April. They are sold in packs of 10, normally for $43.75. So with the 10% discount, $39.37 for a 10-pack, so that's really less than $4 per book through the end of April. If anyone has any questions about what we did today, why am I not, there we go, or need more information, I'm going to go out to show you the website that Susan's referring to in just a moment, but it's newreaderspress.com/workwise. There is our customer service number for people to call, or if you want to email Greg or myself with any questions. Before I move over to the website, I just want to ask Greg, are there any last questions that came in that we want to address?
No, I think Susan did a great job, and not really any new questions rolling in, aside from how do we order it, and most of those have been covered.
So we're going to scoot over to the website quickly. So this is the WorkWise page of the website, and you can go in and order the books here. But if you go to newreaderspress.com WorkWise and click on this free resources and correlation, it will bring you to all of the different types of worksheets that Susan was talking about. Here's some from our soft skills books that people can fill out. And we also have correlations to TABE 11 and 12 for math and for the reading through language arts. And then here are the lesson plan templates that Susan developed for us. So you can go into those. Why are they not coming up? Oh, here we go, down here. They're in a Word document. Which will hopefully open up. There we go. So there's a template, and then as she mentioned, there's also a place on the website that she did 3 lesson plans, one for each book. So it's a good start for you to look at and model what she's done, and then you can go in and create your own lesson plans as well. So that pretty much sums up our webinar today, unless anyone had any questions.
Got a few more, if I can interject,
Yeah.
Sue. One, there seems to be a misunderstanding. A few people are under the impression that a workbook costs just under $45. But to reiterate, that is in fact for a pack of 10.
Yes.
So it's 10 workbooks for the $43.95, and you know, those of you who respond to this webinar special can get it for just under $40, and that is for 10 workbooks, not just for one pamphlet or book. A second question's cropped up a couple of times. Correlations to TABE 11-12. The answer is yes. We do have TABE correlations to 11 and 12 on the website. If you go to WorkWise and then look under free online resources, you'll find the correlations to TABE, to CASAS, to College Career Readiness Standards, all there. Let's see. Other questions? Love it. Thank you so much. Are we recording? Yes, we are recording, and we will put this on in our archive so that it will be made available.
And we will email to everyone as well.
And we'll be emailing it along with a copy of the PowerPoint. So the answer to that is yes. Let's see. Post the promo code again, please.
Oops. It's APR18.
APR18. There it is. Susie Roberts is the best. Thanks, Cheryl. We think so too.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
And if anyone on the phone will be at the COAID conference next week, stop by and take a look at the books. I'm sure we'll be giving out some samples. And you can call our customer service number as well. So thank you everyone very much. Again, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Greg. And please reach out to us if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.